Hello. MySQL database programming. Now, this session is going to take place in such a way that it will consider every aspect of MySQL from a beginner level to an expert level. It will take us through 14 chapters, 14 sections, or 14 sessions. It could be more than that because sessions like transactions is likely to take more time than necessary. So this particular version of this recording is to talk about the installation of MySQL. MySQL can be used on various operating systems. However, the commonest operating system is Microsoft Windows. It can be used on Linux, it can be used on CentOS, it can be used on Mac, it can be depending on what the expectations are. But for this particular session, we shall look at only the Microsoft Windows session or Microsoft Windows part of it, which is the longest and the most tricky part of all the installations. So looking at Windows installation, to install MySQL is very straightforward, even though it can be tricky towards the end of it. The best way to start it is to log on to Google and just search, just like what we have here. Search by typing download MySQL for Windows. If it is Linux, just type download MySQL for Linux. If it is CentOS, just search for download MySQL for CentOS. The same thing holds for Mac and the rest. So with this, all you need to do is to download MySQL installer here. Now, because on this system, I have already installed MySQL because the process takes a whole lot of time, and instead of wasting our time expecting the system to complete it at a particular point in time, and it takes longer than necessary. So that explains why the installation has been done, and at the same time, every step of the installation has been captured in this recording. Now click on download MySQL, and that takes you here. After the download here, it takes you here. Now from this window, what we have is an option of two window installers. Either we use the first one, which is MSI installer for 32-bit, x86. The same thing for the other one. Now, let me explain the big difference between the two. The first option, this option here, looks at downloading and installing from the web directly. This option does not keep a copy, a downloaded copy as such. It picks it from the internet and installs directly on the system. While the second option here downloads the entire software without installation. In other words, the installation with the second part could be completed at a later time, could be initiated and completed at a later time. But the first one, the moment it starts, you will not stop it until it is completed. So that is the big difference between the two. And that explains why the size of this is more than the size of this. So this only downloads a small file that is required to initiate the download from the internet. So for this particular installation that was done, I used the second option, that is downloading this particular file with 439.6 megabytes. So the download took a little while, and as soon as the download is completed, double click on it. The first part of it, the next screen that greets you is the screen here. the system expects you to sign up to Oracle. If you have Oracle login detail, you can just use it here, and it takes you to the download directly. Alternatively, if you want to sign up to a new Oracle web account, then it goes. If you're not interested in signing on to anything Oracle, you can just click on this guy here. No, thanks, just start my download. In other words, when you need to pick anything from the Oracle environment at a later stage or later time, you may still need to sign up. So I recommend that we sign up. You sign up so that we have a login detail. The next screen from the previous screen, after exiting the sign off, the sign up screen, and or you choose not to sign up. The system brings you here, whereby you will now need to select to tell the system what exactly is it that you want from the installer. The first option says developer default. This is what, if you are a database developer, that is, you are responsible for designing the database, designing the schemas and all those kind of things. That means you are a developer. And in other words, you can play around with database, MySQL databases, but for development purposes. You could be an application developer also because you'll be connecting to MySQL. So you are still seen as a developer. So in this case, the developer default is for that purpose. It allows you to use your SQL server, to your MySQL the way you want it. You can use the shell, you can use your router, depending on what you want to make use of, but for development purposes. Now, the second option, install the servers. In this case, it assumes that you want to keep the machine as a server, whereby data goes in there from various angles. And the next option, the third option here says client only. So that means this is like a desktop computer that clerk, that officer, whoever is in the office make use of to connect via an application or otherwise. So this does not require a server. Then we have the full option. The full option has all the features that we had mentioned earlier on. Then custom has to do with you manually installing those options that's of interest to you instead of picking any of this directly. So as soon as you have your choice made, then click next. Now in our situation here, we decided to go for full option so that we'll have all the tools that we need to run. Next. Now on this window, from the previous window, the system checks the requirements, and that is what we have on the screen here. So it shows that, okay, this is not on the system, it has to be installed. This is not on the system, it has to be installed. This is not there, it has to be installed. Everything listed here are required, but they are not installed. So for us to progress, the system had to ensure that all these are in place. Please note that what you find here varies. It depends on whatever is installed on that computer. In some cases, you have only 2 items. In some, you have 3. In some computers, you have 4, depending on how updated the computers are. But the server used for this purpose, for this particular occasion, is a new server, is a new installation. No update has not been pulled. That explains why we have all this. If we had gone through updating the server, the list might not have been this long. So now how do we get all this into the system? Now, if you look at the right hand side here, the system says manual. Manual means if you expand this, what this is saying is that this must be installed. Visual Studio version 2015, 2017, or 2019 here must be installed to progress. So I suggest at this level, you terminate this installation by clicking cancel. Just click cancel, get out of this installation, then go back to Google. Now, from the Google interface, search for download Microsoft Visual Studio 2019 Community Edition. The reason why I'm making use of Community Edition is that it is free. Licenses are not required. So just search for download Microsoft Visual Studio 2019 Community Edition. We have two options here, this or this. If you click on this, it takes you go through a longer route to get to 2019. But if you click on this, it takes you there directly where you make your choice and you move on from there. So as soon as the installer had been picked, downloaded, you double click on it for the system to install it. Now the first screen that greets you is this. So this verifies the computer and what is required to install Visual Studio on it. Now when the installation has been when the installer has been completed, not in the installation now, but the installer had already completed its own first phase of making itself available for you to install what you need. Then you have the screen. Now with this screen on, just click on ASP.NET and Python development, then install while downloading. So this takes close to, it depends on computers. In some cases, close to 1 hour. Like on my computer, it took like 1 hour to be completed. So because it's a very large solution. Now, you see the screen when the installation starts, and it keeps going this way, downloading the whole thing up to it's downloading 3.6 gigabytes up to here. So as the download continues, installation also continues at the same time. So when the two have been completed, then you can say that you have successfully installed Visual Studio on the computer. Now, after the installation, then you go back to MySQL installer that we used earlier and start from this phase. Start from here again. You start from here. Yeah, double click on it. It takes you here. Then from here to this point, at that point, you will now find out that this guy has changed. So the screen becomes something of this nature, which implies all the things required that needs to be installed have been installed, have been made ready, but they are not installed, but they are now available for MySQL. And that explains why the status for each of these is ready to install. Now let's go to the next phase by clicking execute so that installation of all this continues. So that's allowed you to install all this automatically, not manually. So when they are done, the status of for each of them changes from ready to install to complete. Click next again, and that takes us here where it tells us, okay, these are the things we have based on what we have done. So we're now ready to install the server. We're ready to install the router, because everything that we had installed all along has been all the files required for MySQL to install. So now that we have done the prerequisite, all the requirements have been installed, now we can go ahead and install the server. So ready to configure, ready to configure, ready to configure for each of this. Now this is the server itself. This is the router. Router means you have another computer that you want users or applications to connect to instead of connecting directly to MySQL server. Then sample and examples, these are just sample databases that came with MySQL. Now click next, that brings us here. Now, at this point, we need to tell the system how we want to configure the database management system. Now, the first option here, which is the configuration type. If you click on this drop down, gives you 3 options. Option number 1 is that this computer that we're using is a development computer. You need to tell the system whether it's a development computer or it's a server computer or a dedicated computer. Now I'm going to explain the three. The development computer requires minimal memory. It's really light. You don't need much of memory to run them. Now, if you choose that it is a server computer, the system gives you medium memory consumption levels. In other words, you can run your web applications connected to it directly. Now, if you choose dedicated, from here, the system allocates all the memories that you have available to MySQL. That is the configuration type. Now, connectivity type has to do with how do you expect users to get connected to this database. The users could be through applications or those people working on MySQL directly via other tools. Yes, it can be TCP/IP, but the port number you can change. The default is 3306, which you can change to whatever number that is of interest to you. If it's a number that you feel you'll be able to remember, you can put it down. Now, the best practice here is that whatever number is kept here is documented so that it's not forgotten, just in case there is need to fall back to it. Now, the named pipe is the name that the server assigns to this instance that you are trying to install. So for you to change this, just click on the named pipe and this is enabled. So you can change this. The same way if you want to change the way the name is in the memory of the computer, that's shared memory. Click on this guy, then change this. Now, as soon as you're done with that, the next option, the next part is optional, really. You have the option of either you do additional configuration or you continue with what you have. What you have is minimal, you can run with it. However, you can go ahead with advanced login. Now, when you click advanced login, what you have on this side increases. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, with advanced login, you see the difference in the next slide. Now we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2 more added to it. So with the next button, we find ourselves here, whereby we choose our authentication method. You will agree with me that in the office, you can do authentication to your email or whatever as the same as what you use for your computer. In this case here, we have strong password encryption for authentication. Then we have the legacy authentication methods. Now I'm going to explain the two of them. The strong password encryption is the username and password that you must have specified when you are configuring the system. So this is required either when you are configuring the system or you are adding the user. So this is key, and the system sees this as this has been very important. And that explains why it is always recommended over legacy authentication methods. Although this does not take away the legacy authentication method, is only complementary. Now, here we decide to choose our strong password encryption method, and we expect that the next screen should give us opportunity of adding our password. Now, this is the root password. By default, the username to MySQL is called root, ROOT. That is the username. It's not written anywhere, but that is the default username. Now here, the system expects you to create a password, a strong password for the root. That is what we have here. So creating that and repeating the stuff here keeps the database management system safe. Now you may want to add another administrator, maybe yourself or somebody else, to the system. Instead of using the root to log in, which is not always advisable, then you can click add user. Now, when you're adding user, you can determine the kind of right or access level as a privileges that you will assign to the person you are adding. Now let's see from the next screen. Now when you click add user from that previous screen, it brings you here where you will need to specify the username of that person. What is the host computer? The host computer in this case is this computer, is the local host in the sense because that is the only computer that I have got. But in an organization where we have more than one MySQL database servers, they will all be listed here. You now choose whichever one that is of interest based on your requirements. Now, the next thing is now to determine the role. What role do you want to give the person you are creating, the account that you are creating, just to ensure that the user has the appropriate privileges to work. So that can be done by clicking on this row here. Then that gives you a list. Now the list given is what we have here. We have backup admin that requires minimum rights because the work is just to back up the database and restore. And we have database admin which has all the right to do everything that needs to be done on a particular database. Database designer who has a right to create, to change, to reverse database schema as may be required. Then we have database manager. This one has rights over all databases. Please, we need to understand the difference between database admin and database manager. This guy has right to perform all tasks on a database that is specified, that's attached to him. But this guy has right on all databases on the system. Full right. Instance manager takes care of server maintenance, maintaining the hardware, the database where the database infrastructure within the organization. Monitor admin looks at the servers, monitor issues here and there just to be sure everything is fine. Then process admin, the right gives access to monitor, to kill user processes. There are times users will be working and there will be some lock processes that will need a user process to be killed. Yeah, it is done here. Sometimes it is done at the application level. So that is what happens here. We have replication admin whose job is just to do replication from one site to another. What's the right here is specifically to do that job and nothing else. Security admin looks at creating the users, bringing the users on through the right access and privileges. Then the last one is the user admin, whose work is to support the users and include as well as include password reset, because users normally will always have issues with password reset. So we cannot wish that away. Now, as soon as all these have been specified, then there's need to specify the database password and the login password of this user. Then next, after specifying, now in this case, I created Nam as a user. Now what I did was drop Nam here, then here give him rights, dbadmin, and then give password. That brought us here. Now, as you can see here, the database I created at the other end is weak. Right, well, this is just on my computer here. So the system looks at the strength of your password to be sure that the computer, the server is secured. If it's weak, you'll be updated. If it is medium, the system tells you. If the password is strong, you'll see it on green. This will be green. If it's medium, you see it on yellow. Okay, now the next one is that we may want to configure the installation as a Windows service. Windows service in the sense that anytime you power down window or you do anything on window or you power down window or you bring it back up, the service comes up. And when you shut it down, the service goes down. So it runs the way Windows run. Then we check this option here. And if you are doing that, we can give it a name, if we choose not to use the default name, MySQL 80. That takes us to the next part. Now here, this is a very important part of the entire installation because there will continue to be errors, issues here and there. So we need to be able to track them. Where are they going? And how do we get hold on them so that we can resolve and move on? Now, the first one has to do with general error log. That when error log comes, it goes into, this is the default name that the system wants to give to it. You can change the name, but it must just end with .err. You can change it to anything of your choice. So the same thing here, slow query log, that is for queries that are locking or very slow, that needs to be improved. They are logged here so that improvement could be done. But when you are talking about queries that are slow, you have to give the definition of being slow. In other words, queries that took over more than 10 seconds to run, then they are said to be slow. Now, the last part of this one is the bin log. Now, the bin log also, the bin log takes care of events, database events that needs to be kept, recovery, anything along the database events are kept in the bin. So in this part, so you can change the part by clicking on this, change the part, take it to another appropriate part that is of interest to you, then you're good to go. Now the next part, that is nothing to do here really, but this is just to let us know that, okay, we have a server ID which is 1 and is unique. Is a unique identifier for this server within the topology that we are using. Now, if you have more than one server, this number is not going to be 1. So if you have more than one server, you can have, this could be server 2 or server 3 or server 4, server 5, whatever. So we can change this to 1000 so that this server ID becomes 1000. It's up to whoever is installing. Now the table names case. This option sets configuration to lower. The moment you use 1 here, you are saying that all tables, whatever names that you are using for them, will come as lowercase. Lowercase. Then if you choose 2, then the variable is set accordingly also. Now click next. The system gives us the summary of everything that we have configured. We have not done the installation, but prepared all that we need to do the installation of MySQL. So the action of clicking execute installs MySQL. So the installation goes from the first one to the last one and start checking when it's done. As soon as that is done, you click finish. We are good to go. This screen greets is the next screen that results, and this is what we call MySQL shell. This is MySQL shell. You can actually write your script from this shell if you so choose to. If you choose to do that. However, instead of using this, you can make use of the workbench, which was installed along the way as we're installing the solution. The workbench, just go to your window. For example, just from your window button and search for MySQL. Now let me go to this guy here. This is it here, and all I need to do is MySQL. That is it. This is the shell here. If I want to go to the shell, if I click this, it gives me the shell. Yeah, I have the shell now. Now, if I don't want to use the shell and I want to use the workbench, I'll just come here and say MySQL. I have all the workbench. I have it here. So I click workbench. So the system gives me workbench. So I have the workbench here. So whichever way I decide to use, but I prefer using this instead of the shell. The shell is too ugly. It's not friendly. It's not friendly at all. So I prefer, just like every other person will do, I prefer using workbench. Now, because the solution has been completed now, we can click on this guy. It requests for password. Yeah, we are in. We are ready to start writing our query, to bring in the data and start running what we need to do. Now, we are done installing this solution. That is where we are here. And this is the screen that we just saw. So now I go back to this. Now, let me just take us through the workbench to an extent so that we have some little understanding, because as we get along, you are likely to pick more detail about it, because we are going to be making use of it from the beginning to the end. Now, from the file here, I have I can create a model from several tables and start a new query tab. That is, this is 1, this is 2, depending on what I want to do. I can open a model, open a script. This is my last script run. Run a script, close connections, close tabs. I want to close this tab now, close tab. It's done. The second one is gone. Now here I have edits. There is nothing serious here. The only thing I can see here is find and replace, format, because I do not have any query. All those ones are grayed out. Autocomplete, yes, this one helps you as you type, it autocompletes for you. So that explains why we use it. So just click on it and so as you do select, you will see autocomplete coming for you, all from in that order. But we don't have any database here, so the system is not selecting, it's not suggesting anything for us. Then the next one, view is just, there is nothing serious there. It's just to view what's going on here. The home is where we are already, so there is nothing serious there. Now, a query tab. If you have a series of queries and you want to run them at the same time, then we make use of this. You are running them also here, but you are running them to text. Make use of this. So basically, we are going to make use of this more. So explanation and limits. This is to limit the number of rows that the system returns. Sometimes because of the size of the memory of a computer, you are limited by the number of rows that the system will return to you. So that the system do not hang. Okay. Collect performance schema statistics. Yeah, this one is good, especially when the system starts getting slow and users are complaining and there is need for some improvement. So we use this to pick whatever is going on. So the reconnect server means when there is a disconnection with the server, between the client and the server. Between this, for example, if this is not my server and I'm connected to another server. So reconnect means when I lose connection, please reconnect back as soon as you are able to, as soon as possible. A new tab to current server. That means if I open a new tab here, just like this, a new tab here, it should connect me to the current server. An auto commit transaction, that means automatically just commit it down. Connect to database in case you want to change your database connection. All you need to do is to open this guy, and we're using local instance, which is the one we have. Here you can use standard sockets, standard TCP/IP, local instance. Yeah, this is the 3306 number that we saw. This is our root. Remember, our username was root. That's the admin name for MySQL. So if you have schema, then you can give the schema name here that we want to connect to. and then we click OK. It takes us in if we have the right. Now, this is another connection here with SSL, but for this one, the administrator will have provided all the parameters that are required here. Then we have the advanced one also. So this is what is of importance to us to connect. Okay, so I'm just using this opportunity to explain this so that we have some understanding. It's not really a major thing, but it's good we understand the way it works. Some of us can connect Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio to MySQL. It's also possible. So it depends on what you want to achieve and how you want to go about doing it. Yeah, doing that. Okay, now server status. So this gives the status of your server. It tells you, okay, as you can see, this server, and I just click now, gives me some summary about the server. If there's anything that I need to look at, instead of green, I'll see red. But I cannot see any, I cannot see any red here, so that shows I'm okay. If I need to restart the server, instead of putting it off and on or shutting it down, I'll rather refresh from here. Okay, so now the next thing is manage connections. In case there are various connections, you will see all the connections here as an administrator. You will see all of them here, so you can manage them. You can check which connection to terminate and which to release, whatever, depending on what the situation is. So our DB for our database that is running now, as you can see, is running, and that's why this guy is green. CPU load is almost 0%. 4 connections based on the little thing I've just done, and this is the traffic. The key efficiency. INODB. This is an example of database that came with the system. Yeah, nothing else on the other ones. Okay, so now we move to okay, still on the servers. Now client connections. If you want to connect, you want to see the clients that are connected, what are they doing, blah blah blah. So we have all those things here. All these ones are based on the little thing I've done this morning. This morning. Now, if I want user and privileges, it gives me a list of all the users. I created NAM. This is NAM here. I can see that NAM. NAM has all these rules. Yes, I did not attach any privilege, every schema to NAM because I do not have any. It has all these rules. So if I need to take NAM off some rules, all I need to do is just to check and uncheck. Simple. And then you can have access to this one and come back here and say, okay, you just alter, but don't alter as a routine. Don't create. So depending on what I want this person to do, as soon as I'm done, I'll click apply, and the configuration will be applied to the system. So just to look at major things that I'll be looking at, data export in case you want to take data out of the system. Yeah, you're taking it from? You're taking it from here. Where are you taking it to? So all this we are going to consider, but just looking at overview today, because as we get along, these are part of the things that we're going to be doing. Dashboard. Yeah, this is also a summary of the servers. This is the network performance, which is not red. This is my SQL. No query is giving me red. Then this is the database activities saying it's just 19% usage. So basically, this is just a little overview because we are going to work with quite a lot of stuff as we get along, and some of these things we are likely to fall back to them. We'll come back to them one after the other, and that should take care of the beginning of my SQL. Just in case you have any question, just feel free to drop me a message via my email, olakazim@gmail.com. Thank you.